Folks, this is our second lesson in our grammar unit, working on identifying different types of sentences. So again, if you don't have your notebook out, make sure you grab that note and be jotting down the information here. So we're going to identify some types of sentences because, again, they're going to kind of rule the different types of sentences are going to need different types of punctuation as we go through these. So before we start talking about punctuation, let's work on identifying what types of sentences we have. So the first type of sentence is a simple sentence, which is comprised of just one independent clause. And that could be a really, really short independent clause or it could be a long independent clause. Remember, this is just one thing that we're talking about that has one subject and one verb. Like I like turtles. And who wouldn't? Look at this little guy. He's so cute. Second type of sentence is a compound sentence. What a compound means is like two things stuck together. Like a compound word is two words stuck together, or a compound in chemistry is it's made up of a bunch of different molecules or elements. Hope I'm getting that right. You can correct me. You can make angry comments on my YouTube video if I got that wrong. And that's two independent clauses stuck together. And we'll learn different ways that you can correctly punctuate those. But I like turtles, but we don't have any in the zoo. I like is one subject-verb combination. We don't is another subject-verb combination. And then our last, well, not quite our last, but our second kind of fundamental sentence type is going to be a complex sentence. And that's going to be one independent clause and then at least one dependent clause. Now, notice that you can have more than one dependent clause for any independent sentence that you have, right? Realistically, I could have one dependent clause on either side of a complex sentence. So when I see turtles, I get very happy. Notice how I have two subjects, I see and I get, but this one has one of those subordinating conjunctions in front of it. And we have to be able to recognize these because we're going to punctuate them differently. All right, the last sentence type, which is kind of a sentence type, is where it starts to get really fun and confusing and complex. And that's what we want, right? We want to be able to convey complex ideas clearly. And so when we're effectively putting together simple sentences and adding dependent clauses in an effective way, that's where I'm going to convey a complex idea well through with my use of grammar. So take a look at this one. The students fell asleep, independent clause, while Mr. Rested excitedly talked about grammar, dependent clause, and the rest of the school played dodgeball, independent clause, right? Students fell, there's one subject-verb combination. Mr. Rested talked, second subject-verb combination. The rest of the school played dodgeball, third subject-verb combination. And notice that I put the dependent clause after my independent clause because dependent clauses can go on either side of an independent clause. So some good things to note. All right. When we start putting things together, that's where we start running into problems with run-ons and fragment sentences. So if you ever hear me like comment, oh, that's a run-on sentence, and that hasn't like stuck in your mind what those are yet, here's the definitions. So generally, a run-on sentence is more than two independent clauses. So Lily enjoyed the bouquet of tulips John gave her on prom night. However, she preferred roses, so she left them at dinner. That's a run-on. Lily enjoyed, she preferred, so she left, right? I've got three independent clause subject-verb combinations in there, and that's going to tip the scales and be like, that's just too much. You got to break this sentence up. There's too much going on in there in terms of independent clauses. Or you have two independent clauses that aren't punctuated correctly. We haven't learned about punctuation yet, but you can kind of see that there's something fundamentally wrong with the sentence. I love turtles. They make me happy. I'm kind of like just talking straight through any pause that I would naturally put into that sentence. So we'll learn how to punctuate these two to make them correct sentences. And then a fragment sentence is just a sentence that doesn't have a clear independent clause because it was a really big deal. This is something that we would say in our normal language, like because it wasn't a big deal, or because it was a really big deal. Like that seems like a response to a question someone might ask me. But in writing, that's going to not fulfill our requirements for an independent clause. Remember, a sentence needs to have an independent clause to be considered a sentence. Or looking out to the green light, right? Gatsby, what was he doing? Looking out to the green light. We would need to add that subject-verb combination at the beginning of this fragment. He was looking out to the green light. And that would make this a simple sentence, right? We'd be able to create one of those independent clauses from these fragments. Okay, here's a little practice. Here's three sentences. I want you to pause this video and, well, I don't. John Cena wants you to pause this video and try to figure out what kind of sentences these are. All right, give it a pause. Cool. Did you do it? Great. Let's see how you did. First one is a compound sentence because we've got two subject-verb combinations. So independent clause number one is John Cena is. Second independent clause situation is I think. Two independent clauses makes it a compound sentence. Second one is a complex sentence because I have two subject verb combinations, I finish and I just love, but I have that dependent clause signifier here at the beginning. So this first one is a dependent clause, second part is an independent clause. And then the last one, this one was tricky, but it's just a simple sentence. Because if we boil this down to just its ultimate elements, is what was echoing? Well, the ticking was echoing off the walls, right? The ticking echoed. All this other stuff is just kind of extra description, which makes the sentence a lot more interesting, but it doesn't change the fact that this is a simple sentence. And because of that, I'm going to kind of leave punctuation out of it. So that's where we're going to be going next, is how to punctuate complex and compound sentences. All right, so quick review. Simple sentences are just an independent clause. Complex sentences are a combination of dependent and independent clauses. And notice the dependent can go on either side of the independent clause. Compound sentences are just two independent clauses joined together, no dependent clauses. And then a compound complex sentence is at least two dependent or independent clauses and at least one dependent clause in any order. And we might have more than one dependent clause. It gets weird. Welcome to English Grammar. I'm so excited you're here. Thanks for watching.